over the past few years due to its attractive business environment and skilled workforce. Our upcoming panel discussion on increasing mergers and acquisitions trends in India and their impact will explore the trends behind this phenomenon, as well as analyze its financial and its legal implications. The panelists for this discussion are, please help me in welcoming Kaushik Mukherjee, President Legal at Indiabulls Housing Finance. Welcome, Kaushik. Next, we have AshishJain, Lunia founder, Samvidhan Attorneys at Law. Welcome. Next, Anagha Anasingaraju, designated partner, KANJ and Co. Welcome. Eman Ali, senior associate. Aliff Fazelbhoy, senior partner at ALMT Legal. Welcome back on stage, sir. And Upendra Nath Sharma, partner, JSA. Welcome back as well. All right, panelists, you have 50 minutes, and the panel, the timer will indicate the amount of time left, and the last 10 minutes will be for question and answer. Would you like to?
So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first session in the afternoon. I'll be moderating this panel, and thank you to my panel members. They often say that the first session after lunch, is it the easiest or the most difficult? I mean, people are well fed. We've had a very interesting morning, a great lunch. People are now raring to go again. Or are you too well fed and ready for a power nap? So we hope we keep you engaged enough so that it's the former and not the latter. We have a great panel, as I said, and Alexandra has introduced everyone, so I won't spend much time introducing everyone again. The topic we have for today is M&A trends in India. And I think the last 3 years, you will all agree, has been some of the most interesting years that we have had in our lifetimes. In 2019, when COVID first hit, in our M&A practice, at least our experience was that everything came to a grinding halt. And for the first couple of weeks, nobody knew what was going to happen. Then we found the trend that there were some great smaller acquisitions available for the taking. A lot of the small businesses and promoters were finding it very difficult to deal with COVID, and the bigger players and the private equity investors saw a great opportunity. So within a few weeks of COVID, the M&A practice again started picking up with these kind of acquisitions. And thereafter, as we all got used to life with COVID, and especially now that hopefully COVID is kind of behind us, we've seen great trends and great acquisitions happening. India has been one of the great destinations, as Alexandra said. And so without much more ado, I will first ask Upendra, who is a partner at J. Sagar Associates in the Gurgaon office, specializing in M&A transactions. I'll ask Upendra to give us his thoughts on the recent trends in M&A. Is it more cross-border? Is it domestic mergers? Is it private equity? And what's kind of happening in the market? So Upendra, if you can give us your thoughts.
Thank you, Arif. Good afternoon, everyone. As Arif just mentioned, after lunch is a tough session, but I hope we'll be able to keep you guys awake. Coming straight to the point on M&A, you see, despite COVID-19 pandemic and thereafter, global supply chain getting affected, and also the Ukraine-Russia conflict and their consequences on, economy, inflation, etc., not to forget the global, headwinds in terms of economic woes coming. Despite all these factors, Indian M&A market has been doing very strong. We've seen unprecedented growth in terms of numbers, in terms of transactions. And there are several reasons for this. You've had people wanting to, companies wanting to adapt themselves for want of better technology, for creating more value, increasing their base to attract more attention and reach out to the more markets. In that scenario, that's how it's been happening. In M&A pure, especially startups, private equity has been very active. And, even in the, green energy space, technology, all these have been very, very active sectors. And it is expected that going forward also, these will remain very active. In terms of sheer numbers, India in the first 8 months of 2022 had the largest M&A transactions, which were about $148 billion, and about 58% jump of the corresponding period in the previous year. Of course, US was the largest contributor, followed by Singapore and Japan. And then Google's investment of about 700 million in Bharti was also noteworthy, one of the bigger ones this year. So that's been the trend. And you see a lot of cash availability, young entrepreneurs, and as I said, people wanting to create more, reach out. Even domestic M&A has been doing very well. The biggest one, about $60 billion, was HDFC Bank merger with HDFC. That's the biggest landmark in the financial services sector in India. And that's also a trendsetter. We'll see more consolidation in that sector. Putting just the financial services sector, I think they in turn had about 300% growth over the first 9 months of this year. So, that's the trend which has been there. And also the startup, they are the kind of new age innovation guys. They upset the status quo, create more opportunities. Even there, we've had about 50% jump. And besides that, the number of unicorns born in India is amazing. And we will see going forward that unicorns will also be creating more, acquisitions. They will start more, synergies, getting more companies within their fold. We've seen, Byju's acquiring overseas, Good Learning, Epic. Yeah, even, other outbound investments have been very strong, such as, Adani's, SB Energy, Reliance doing ROC Solar. So, those kind of things. So, has been very active. So, in this scenario, both M&A, the domestic M&A, and outbound M&A is going to be thriving going forward. I think that's largely the scenario, Aliff.
Thank you, Upendra. So, as you've seen, the trends are looking good for India. And the Indian government is always propagating that there is ease of doing business. That's the propaganda of the government, that we want to introduce laws, we want to introduce regulations, we want to make business easy to do in India. But is ease of business really a reality, or is it a myth? Do the regulations, do the laws really support ease of business? And I think this is a topic on which I can talk for hours, but of course I won't be doing that. I just want to talk about a couple of legislations and procedures here, that when you have an M&A, you have to look at exchange control laws, you have to look at Companies Act, you have to look at, if there's a merger, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and then of course if there are public sectors, all the SEBI regulations. And sometimes even if you're buying a business, there comes into play GST issues. So the compliances have now kind of overtaken the law. And earlier, where we used to have legal and compliance heads being common, now very often you have compliance being separated from legal. it's okay if you have big companies listed on the stock exchange, multi-million-dollar companies. You want to regulate them. You want to make sure the shareholders are informed. You want to make sure procedures are in place. But when you have smaller private companies looking to grow their business, sometimes compliances, to my mind, can be quite troublesome. And I think simplification is necessary. Take, for example, a recent deal I did, which was a private company, young private company with a little bit of investors and looking for a great opportunity, needed funds urgently, identified a foreign investor willing to invest $10 million immediately. As lawyers, we did a great job. The agreements were signed within 2 days. Everything was ready. Money was ready to be sent. But then wait, we had the compliance team, get into play and say you have to do a lot of compliances. So first, the company had to open a new bank account because when you issue shares to a new investor, it's a preferential allotment. And so they couldn't use the existing bank account. They had to open a new account. That takes its own time with KYCs and everything. You need valuations to be done, not one but two. Under FEMA, you need it from a charter accountant or merchant banker. Under Companies Act, you need it from a registered valuer. The current capital of the company is small. You need to increase the authorized capital. So you need to again pass a board resolution, a shareholders resolution, file a form, some SH7 or something with the ROC. That's not just a filing. You need an approval from them. That can take a few days. As if that's not enough, you have to then make an offer to the foreign investor. He's already agreed, he signed the agreement, but you have to make an offer in a prescribed form called, again, PAS 4, and you have to file that with the ministry on the ministry website. Then the investor has to accept the offer. Still some more formalities. You have to now have a board meeting again to approve the offer. The bank account is opened. Then you need to, actually the money comes in to the bank account. When the money comes in, I still can't use the money. I have to actually issue and allot the shares and then file another form, PAS 3, with the MCA website again. And only then can I issue the shares and use the money. So by the time the formalities are done, the money comes in and the company can actually use the money, the opportunity may be lost. Now, luckily in our deal, we all got it done in a matter of days. But with all the compliances, with the KYCs and other things, it could easily take a few days or a few weeks at times. I've seen transactions. And really, it defeats the purpose of wanting to grow your business quickly. And even after that, there are post-investment formalities, which, of course, we won't get into now. So there were two legislations which were introduced last decade, which were supposed to be path-breaking, or three legislations, like the Companies Act 2013 overruled the 1956 Act. And then there was the IBC, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which was hailed by people all over the world as a path-breaking legislation. And the same with the Goods and Service Tax. All have been actually on paper good legislation, barring, as I said, the compliance nightmares which are present in all the regulations. Anyway, enough of that. I would like to call upon Anagha now, who is a partner in her firm and with over 20 years of experience in M&A, and particularly with the NCLT and the IBC code, and she's also a mediator. So I'd like her to share some of her thoughts on the regulatory challenges and hurdles and how that impacts the M&A sphere. Anagha?
Thank you, Aliff. Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, this ease of doing business in India is a priority for this government, as they have been stating this since 2014 when this new government came into power. Since then, if we see the ranking of India on the ease of doing business in the index, it has gone up from 130 to 100. So this happened in 2017, and that was largely due to this the introduction of this insolvency and bankruptcy code, which is not only for resolution of sick companies, but also it is in terms of, it's known as, it's called as a game changer, wherein being a game changer for resolution of these companies and even for exiting. If a company wants to close down, then for exit, clean exit or for easy exit, this was touted as a good regulation which would help companies to get out faster if they want to close down, which had been like a lagging point in the Indian economy, for where companies were not able to close down or wind up very easily. Sometimes it used to take decades in the high courts to close down the companies, especially if they were sick units. But IBC was touted as a game changer, and in the beginning it did work in that way, because the jurisdiction to handle the M&A as well as the insolvency matters is with the National Company Law Tribunal, which is a specialized tribunal which has quasi-judicial authorities, and which once we approach that, we don't need to go to the civil legislations at all. And in this, the NCLT is equipped with judicial and technical members. So these technical members are generally professionals who are equipped to handle these matters, who have had requisite experience in the respective fields. So they are able to handle these matters of M&A, as well as not only getting caught in the procedural aspects of civil law, which used to be the case when it was with the high courts. But with IBC and it coming to the NCLT, the M&A process was expected to be smoother, with the benches understanding what, the urgency, what is there in an M&A process. The M&A, the regulations which are there are a code in itself. So we don't need to approach the civil courts for any other steps in the process except for adjudication of the stamp duty. But otherwise, it's a code in itself by the M&A, the entire process with the NCLT. What has, I would say, gone wrong in the sense is the pendency which is there, because the sheer volume of cases which are being filed on a daily basis in these courts is tremendous. I mean, if you look at the bigger benches which are there in the cities like Bombay, Bangalore, or Chennai, or even Delhi, the sheer volume is so much that they are unable to cope up with the volume of transactions which are there. And it's the same bench which handles the M&A matters and also handles the IBC matters. And IBC cases are just piling up. And on to top it, we had the COVID pandemic. In 2 years, there were online hearings and those things which were really not very effective in getting a resolution or to trying to get to the, to fasten the process, which was the intent of the law. Again, a few bottlenecks, if we can look at it, are getting clearances from couple of government departments, which is required in the M&A process. So that is where even those people need to be sensitized. So previously we had to wait endlessly, for some department to give their clearance so that the NCLT can proceed with the final orders. But now even they have been sensitized, and it has been made time bound that if they don't respond within such and such period, then the courts can go ahead, we can go ahead without waiting for their clearance to some extent. So these are some procedural aspects which are being brought in, but definitely it's not where it should be as of now. There's always a scope for improvement. I think with this, in any country if we go, we take inputs and we take best practices from other countries, and then that is where we are able to have a better law or a better implementation of that law. Because like Aliff rightly said, it's there on paper, but when we are actually implementing it, because of these reasons, there are delays. In smaller benches or in smaller cities where the number of transactions or the volume of transactions is not as much, we are able to get M&A transaction completed very fast, maybe as compared to what we have in other countries also. But especially in the larger benches, I think there is definitely some scope for improvement. And if we are able to reduce the volume and the sheer numbers there, we should be able to get that also in control. Having said that, definitely the government can do something in terms of simplifying the process, maybe not insisting on all the clearances which is there, or even the timelines. Like generally what they say is that merger or an acquisition, it's for closely held companies typically, it is only an internal matter between the shareholders. So which is something why the government should interfere so much. So here in this case, I think to some extent, definitely the regulations can be relaxed, where calling the shareholders meeting, we don't need to go to the courts and take their approval for smaller matters. So this is something which can definitely be done and which should be done if we want to keep this ranking on this ease of doing business. And other things, I think, in terms of improving the the procedural aspects and the regulations is minimizing these kind of bottlenecks. So if we know that we can just proceed without getting those clearances from those departments, I think things will happen on their own. Aliff?
Thanks, Anagha, for the insight into the NCLT and how it works. Now, we've seen that there's a great increase in M&A activity. We've also seen that there are a few bottlenecks and a few regulatory impediments. But despite all that, I think India is a great place to do business. I mean, I can say that I'm quite passionate about this. And I mean, despite my color, I'm fully Indian, made in India completely. And I can definitely vouch that, I mean, the people, the culture, the market, the vibe, everything is fantastic in India. And I would definitely encourage people to invest in India. Now, when we were talking about topics for discussion in today's panel, I invited suggestions from everybody. And the youngest member of our panel, Eman Ali, came up with a topic called killer acquisitions. And I said, what is killer acquisitions? And she said, well, as the name suggests, they are killer deals. And things which are not in the ordinary, they are different, they are high profile, they have huge values, and basically make the headlines. And not only Eman, but even Kaushik has got a lot of experience with his being the head of legal at Indiabulls in the industry sector, previously a lawyer at various law firms. And both have got some very interesting deals to talk about in the media, pharma, and other sectors. So may I ask Eman first to give us a few words on some of the killer deals that she's come across, and then followed by Kaushik. Thanks.
Thank you, Aliff. Thank you. I hope some of you are still awake after that wonderful lunch. So let me start with what killer acquisitions are. So killer acquisitions essentially occur in transactions where nascent firms are preemptively dubbed as being future competitors. They are preemptively dubbed as future competitors to well-established players in the market. That is the reason that they are called killer, because one, it kills the competition, and the second is that after the acquisition, a lot of the research and development that was being undertaken by the target company is either shelved or abandoned, and that is the double meaning of why these acquisitions are named as such. So big MNCs generally have a lot of resources to monitor the market, patent journals and such, and to identify competing drugs and acquire startups or product portfolios that would in the future harm their own market share. On a global scale, when we come to the pharma industry, Indian pharma accounts for 20% of volume and 1.4% of value on a global scale in the pharmaceutical sector. The CCI tries to deal with this in its own way. What it does is it brings in the concept of abuse of dominance, which is Section 4 of the Competition Act. So it includes actions of acquisitions of nascent competitors by developed companies. But so far, to date, the CCI has not prosecuted any company under the Act, under the abuse of dominant position. Additionally, the CCI has to date provided clearance to all mergers in the pharma sector. The problem with monitoring killer acquisitions is slightly difficult because they are deemed to be killer only after the merger has successfully taken place. And there is abject difficulty in preemptively labeling an acquisition as killer, since the allegation is that you're stifling the competition. And that can only come into picture once the merger or acquisition has been completed. And more so in the Indian scenario, because in India, the way clearance for production of drugs is given is, it might not be clear in the initial development stage of the drug whether it's meant for sale in India or abroad. Section 4 is also very cumbersome and may not be utilized where damage has already been done. There may be a different approach. What I suggest is that there should be a different approach for the life sciences and pharma sector by removing the de minimis cap. So certain transactions, by the nature of their value, are excluded from the CCI's eyes. And with pharma, we should take the step of not excluding them, including them, so that nascent competitors can also enter the market. Another facet of this whole argument is that most drugs which are launched in India are developed and tested abroad first. So the Indian market and the availability of drugs in India is highly dependent on the merger and acquisition scene abroad as well. So we are interdependent on each other across countries for availability of drugs. However, in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is looking like the CCI wants to take these up. So let's hope for the best. I will move to Kaushik now.
Hi everyone. Thanks for that. So when we were discussing topics and she brought out the fact that she wanted to talk about killer acquisitions. Now, I thought that let me speak about something that will be close to, what she is trying to bring out. So I thought that I would pick, and there have been quite a few significant mergers and acquisitions in India in the last couple of years. I think Upendra alluded to that, so did Aliff. So it's a difficult bunch to pick one from to speak about. But I thought that why not take this opportunity to talk about hostile takeovers, because they're extremely rare. You see one in maybe 2 or 3 years, a significant one in 2 or 3 years, and so it's quite rare. So the one that I would like to speak about is the recent takeover or attempted takeover by the Adani Group on NDTV, one of the largest media houses in India. Now, this is a really interesting one because it did not start off as an acquisition. So NDTV is held by its promoters through a promoter firm in which its promoters held a significant majority, maybe 99 or 100% of the equity capital there. Now, this promoter entity basically took a loan from another entity that was controlled by a large business group. Now, as it turned out, this loan was secured by warrants, which gave the warrant holder the right to convert the warrants into equity shares of the company and thereby, upon conversion, get a significant majority in the company. So what the Adanis did was they actually purchased the company which was the lender to the promoter firm. So they acquired the company, and immediately upon acquisition of the company, they sent a notice for conversion of the warrants because the loans were still unpaid. So they converted the warrants and they ended up owning about 100% of the company. And this promoter holding company in turn held about 26% of the shares of the listed NDTV company. So 26, 27%, something like that. So indirectly, by acquiring an entity which actually was a lender to the promoter company, they acquired a stake in the listed NDTV entity, which was actually, the promoters of that were these two media barons, the media baron and his wife. Now, what this does is, so of course, once they converted the warrants, they had to, in India, they had to do a tender offer. With the tender offer, their holding now becomes 37% of the listed company, whereas the promoters hold about 32% of the listed company. So now this is a perfect situation now for these two groups to actually thwart each other, ultimately in a position whereas in which one will have to step down and the other will have to take control of the company. So why this is significant is because this was a backdoor entry into the firm. The Adani Group did not try and acquire these shares at all from the current holders. They did not do an acquisition per se, but through this circuitous route, they are in control of one of the largest media companies in India. So this is a perfect example of a hostile. And now what remains to be seen is, in future, how do these two groups, so one has 37, the other has 32, each one will thwart the other in everything that this guy wants to do, because under Indian law, you need a special resolution for anything that is important that you want to do with the company. Special resolution is 75% present and voting. So if these two guys are present and any one without the support of the other cannot pass a resolution. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here, but I suspect one of these guys will have to bow out and sell their stake to the other. And I mean, no, I think the newer guy is the guy who has much more ability to do that. So this is a way in which, you know, the Adanis actually have now taken over and acquired control in NDTV.
Thank you both for the insights into some of these killer acquisitions. I think the story on the hostile takeover was very, very interesting. I move on now to the last member of our panel, Ashish, who's the founder of his firm in Chennai. Ashish was quite passionate about wanting to talk about the impact of FDI on the Indian manufacturing sector and whether we should also encourage overseas investments to gain technology as opposed to only concentrating on inward investments. So Ashish, can you give us your thoughts on that?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. We are always looking at how the country is attracting investments into the manufacturing sector. We have been successful in doing this to a certain degree. But it also comes with a caveat where our knowledge, technical know-how of manufacturing is limited to what exists within the country. We have been of late seeing instances where large companies have been acquiring companies abroad. To cite an example, the Tatas have acquired quite a few companies abroad, and they've bought in technology from these companies to manufacturing in India. This has resulted in the manufacturing cost in India going down, number one. Number two, good flow of knowledge from developed economies where the technology is much advanced. And number three, in my opinion, it benefits the manufacturing sector of the country where technologically advanced products are able to be sold at a competitive price. As a policy, maybe the industry together needs to work on what kind of investments need to come into the country, because we have witnessed a few industries coming into the country where they have attempted to kill off Indian traders, Indian manufacturers, which is not good, which is not good for the country's economy as such. Wherein, if there was a policy method, a policy shift, there is a method, but if there was a principal shift in policy where Indian companies are encouraged to invest in technological companies abroad, that would greatly benefit the market present in India. What this would do is, it will act as an equalizer where we are able to attract investments into the country, right? We need capital, we attract investments into the country, but at the same time, when we are acquiring technologies abroad, this helps us take control of the same. One of the points put forward during our discussion prior to this panel was, are we not already doing it? Are we not taking in technology from abroad? We are taking in technology from abroad, but we are not owning these technologies. Only when we own the technology by purchasing the company abroad or picking up a major chunk, a controlling stake, will we own the technology and it can freely pass into the country. So maybe the industry together needs to work on this and suggest to the GOI how we need to encourage more acquisitions abroad, at the same time keeping the inflow of FDI intact. This, I'm sure, or rather I'm convinced, that will balance out the export and import situation, and the mechanism to do this needs to be mergers and acquisitions only, and not just borrowing the technology from companies abroad. If this is done, I'm very certain that the manufacturing sector in India, especially automobile, I think off late technology, a lot of mobile phone companies are coming in. So these manufacturing companies will greatly benefit, and companies operating in India, listed in India, will benefit greatly.
Thanks, Ashish. And I think we've heard insights on different topics from all panelists. Ashish has just concluded with his wish list on how we can encourage the manufacturing sector and the acquisition of technology. May I ask each of the panel members to just speak for a minute on what you think might be, what would be on your wish list for 2023, or what you think might be some of the sunrise sectors which should be encouraged by the government. For example, like electronic vehicles comes to mind immediately. So let me go in the reverse order. Maybe Kaushik, you can speak for a minute or so on what is your wish list, or what do you see happening next year?
So before I get into wish list, I just want to quickly say that what has been really encouraging for me is that, so I've been in this practice for a number of years, and in the beginning, what we used to mostly see is companies at a high growth stage, which are looking for either angel or venture funding or even PE funding. Are the transactions that were manifold and more common. However, the one piece of news that I want to basically share with all of you is that in the period between 1st April 2021 and 28th Feb 2022, there were 71 tender offers in India for takeover of substantial stake or takeover of control of listed companies in India. Now, why this is significant is that listed companies in India are already, unlike a venture firm where the growth will be very high. You're already in an evolutionary cycle where the company is at a reached critical mass. Now, if you're still able to show growth in such companies, that augurs well for the future. So I would like to close by saying that, and banking, finance, and technology, as Aliff also mentioned, are the two sectors that saw a lot of action in the last year or so. And I'm hoping that this trend continues well into 2023 and even in the future.
Eman, would you like to say a couple of words?
Yeah, I think on my wish list, it would be that domestic companies in India should focus on investing in research and development, because a lot of these companies are more focused on marketing, off patent, whether it's drugs, whether it's cosmetics, whether it's something else. And rather than that, it is to focus on innovation so that the economy overall can have a boost from that.
I think that's a very good wish list. Upendra, Anything?
Yeah, you see, during the pandemic, all age group people started going online shopping, and that's been a big booster. And I think going forward, that will continue. So e-commerce activities will grow to a great extent, and also the private equity-backed M&A, that is going to be a big booster because in the last 1 year, private equity backed, M&A in India was 28% of the global private equity, which surpassed China by about 4%. China was 24%. So that will lead to a lot of investments and backed by private equity. And given the commitments to green energy, I think the green energy will be the hot cake, whether it's e-vehicles or other green energy sources. Besides that, as I said, there are a lot of new talent, new entrepreneurs coming up, startups. They will continue, and the bigger ones may have global dreams like Byju's. They will try and go overseas, and Byju's is a big trendsetter to lead others to global reigns. So these are the sectors I feel should be there.
Thanks, Upendra. And one thing I've learned over all my years is that one must let ladies have the last word. So, Anagha, can you just give us some closing thoughts?
Thank you, Aliff. So, for helping these sectors which are on everybody's wish list, I think the regulatory processes need to be strengthened. So, in my wish list for 2023, it is fully functional NCLT benches with to its 100% capacity, with adequate staff, and also some simplification in the procedures, especially to cut down the red tape and wherever we are facing these pendencies. That would be on the top of the wish list for all the other wish list, I think, to be fulfilled. Thank you.
I think that's amazing because that's exactly my wish list. I mean, today I had 3 matters in the NCLT and my junior just messaged me saying none of the 3 were heard due to what they call as paucity of time. And the judges didn't have enough time to hear it. So I think that is definitely top on my wish list as well. And I would like to thank the panel for a wonderful insight into so many topics. We have a few minutes for questions. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to do so.
Please use the microphone in the center of the room, please. Thank you. Because we want you on camera. You see the camera there? It's live streaming.
Hi, I'm Rahul. So all of you panelists spoke about acquisitions, mergers, investing into R&D. I just want to know and have a word from you people that why any of the Indian brand has not invested in a good mobile manufacturer or a laptop manufacturer. All is assembled in China or comes through China only.
Who would like to take that one?
To any particular panelist, or does anyone want to answer that one?
Well, I think it's more of to do with technology.
Yeah, please, please.
In the microphone. In the microphone, please, so we can all hear you. Thank you.
Rahul, mobile manufacturer. You'll be very surprised. I walked into a mobile shop yesterday in Dubai, and I asked, can you show me a mobile? And I said, where are these mobiles coming from? His straight answer was 100% from India. I said, is nothing coming from China now? He said, sir, it's almost stopped. Yeah. So on the mobile side, I'm sorry I'm taking your time on this, but on the mobile side, I think there's been a huge difference on the Indian side.
So let me correct my question then.
Yeah.
But on the laptop side, I agree. So the mobile side, all the Indian manufacturers are just assembling the things. The raw material, the chips, they are coming from Taiwan or China. None of the Adani, Tatas, Birlas, none have invested in making a global brand like OnePlus, Apple, BlackBerry, to name a few. And even after 2 decades, the laptop is a handy thing. It's a everybody necessity, but the Indian companies are not able to make a global brand.
They don't copy as well.
They are getting into joint manufacturing of Apple things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So this I think comes down to the kind of technology we have in manufacturing. I don't think India has the technology to manufacture the semiconductors that are required for the functioning of these machines. You have Intel, which is a global corporation who dominated the market thus far. Now I think Apple has come in, they are manufacturing their own silicon. So this is where I think Indian companies need to step up. If you look at the Ambanis, the Adanis, the Tatas, with the exception of Tata in a certain sectors, they are more of traders, and they thrive on trading, buying and selling of goods. We need to strengthen the manufacturing landscape here, and I think the next, or what is going to be in demand forever, is technology. Unless we have some policy incentives to encourage manufacturing of technological products, we are going to stay in the same place where we are going to be service providers, where companies like TCS and Wipro are going to have huge market caps, but that may not be the harmonious growth that we are looking to achieve.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon. This is a very interesting topic. We just recently concluded a transaction in India, so we are happy about that. We have our company, Abdul Latif Jameel. So my question actually is related to deal breakers or acquisition killers. So to which extent and what exactly define the line between abuse of dominance versus fair competition under the Indian law? And to which extent the competition authority could be considered as a barrier to entry, especially when it comes to approval, process, requirements, and the duration in particular. So I have another question, but I'll stop with one because of time. Thank you.
Though I'm not an expert in competition law, but under the Indian law, there is a provision for abuse of dominance. However, it is rarely used. It has not been put into action so far, especially in the sector that I've been studying, the pharma sector. The abuse of dominant position is there in the law, but it is something that is not being used.
I think also the larger issue that she mentioned was that, the whole process of approval for a merger by the competition authorities in India happen at the time that you are actually trying to do the acquisition. So this is pre the acquisition, whereas the killer steps actually happen post the acquisition. So there may not be enough in law today to be able to prevent this. But this is something that if this trend continues, then I'm pretty sure that at some point the regulators will look at this.
Yes, last question.
I heard the wish list of all the panelists, especially for the 2023. And considering the fact that we have already reached 8 billion as far as the population is concerned, and in the India scenario also, a lot of lands being used for the construction. So in light of it, what would be the future of agro-tech industry? And I would like to hear from either Aliff or any of the panelists. I mean, why agro-tech is not in your wish list?
Agro-technology. Is there a future for it in India? Yes.
Definitely think there's a future for agro-technology, and in fact, I think at least in the policies, there is a lot of encouragement for, horticulture, plants, breeding. I mean, it is being encouraged. Why it hasn't taken off, I don't know the answer to that. But I think it is, we are based on an agricultural economy, so I see no reason why it should not take off. Any of the others have a view on this?
Yeah, I think this will take off in a big way. Except that, it's a matter of choices, which one is going more and which one is less. But this has great potential, and I'm sure the global players will come in. There are already, seed companies from the US or the Europe who are looking at India. Some are already invested, and I think there would be lots more in this field going forward. Plus, the government also has to ensure that, the local farmer is not disrupted. The big companies come and take over the manufacturing and the bases, so that his livelihood is not, disrupted. So that all has to be taken into account. But in the long run, it has a great potential.
We have these age-old trade unions who kind of tell the farmers, feed them with misleading information, saying the big players will come and you will be deprived. But it's the other way around. If big players come, there'll be more demand for the products, there'll be more demand for exports. So I think a lot of the mindset of some of the age-old thinking has to change.
Thank you very much, Aliff, for moderating this panel. Thank you, panelists, for all the insights.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.